Hello, everybody. It's the Meista from Brews and Tunes, your favorite heavy metal drinking buddy. I am super excited today. I'm chatting with Rob Wrong of the killer doom metal band Witch Mountain, one of my favorite bands. So really happy to be chatting with you, Rob. Thank you so much for joining me.
No problem, man. Glad to be a part of it.
Great, thank you. Well, why don't we start with kind of what you've been up to lately in this crazy times we live in right now with in the middle of a pandemic and kind of everything shut down and has been for quite some time. Like, what have you been doing to keep yourself busy? And, are you working on any new music? Kind of what's been up with you?
Well, to be honest with you, about 3 months before the whole pandemic lockdown happened, I opened a recording studio in Southeast Portland. And I started recording bands, and then everything just kind of like shut down for a few months. So being only a avid kind of like home recording person and having all this gear, I spent a lot of time during the pandemic, just hundreds of hours on YouTube, like researching, mixing and recording and buying microphones and upgrading my gear and stuff. And now it's starting to get back into full swing. So I've recorded about 12 albums.
Oh, wow.
In the last like almost 2 years. So I've been doing that mainly. And as far as Witch Mountain, I kind of shifted gears and got so into like recording that I haven't really spent a lot of time writing new Witch Mountain stuff. I do have some demos that I'm working on for like upcoming releases, which, they're always kind of like, if I have an idea, I just like throw it down, when I'm in my studio. And we did do one song. We did a Soundgarden cover in April.
Oh, nice.
That was released in for the Roadburn redo.
Right.
So we have that. And, we have some things in the works. We have like, it's going to be our 25-year anniversary next year. So we have kind of like a covers album and also like kind of a singles and rarities kind of thing. That's going to come out next year.
Excellent. That's really exciting news.
Yeah. So we're working on that mainly. And I've got a couple songs I've been working on that I'm going to complete probably in the next like 2 or 3 months. But honestly, I've been so busy just completely involved in the studio world that I've, been focusing my time on just recording, mixing bands. Nice. A lot of really cool bands that come through. So
very cool. Yeah, I mean, and you said you've done 12 albums this past year?
Might have been more like, like between 10 and 12. There's a couple that I haven't like completed yet. So I just sent one off for mastering yesterday, the new Misery Men record.
Wow.
Which I ended up playing rhythm and lead guitar in the whole thing. So, so that's another plus too, is I get to play guitar on a lot of these things. Like people will just ask me, hey man, we play guitar on this. So yeah, I played guitar in about 8 or 9 albums in the last like year and a half, but only one Witch Mountain song that was a cover, like a Soundgarden cover tune.
And you've definitely been keeping very busy. That's great news.
Yeah, I'm trying to,
Yeah, that's cool.
I mean, I feel a little guilty because I haven't like, I've been refocusing my energy on learning this stuff, but it's been a nice break actually, to be honest with you.
Nice. Yeah, very cool. And then you're also in the band The Skull as well, correct?
I'm not in that band anymore now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I parted ways with those guys about 2 years ago now.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yep.
All right. So mainly focused on recording studio right now, and a little bit of Witch Mountain, and hopefully some more as things start flushing out.
Yeah, well, there's Witch Mountain, and then also there's this band called It that I started with Billy Anderson about 5 years ago.
Oh, cool. And
Slayer Hippie, who died last year. So there's like these unfinished tracks. There's like 7 tracks. I've done about 4 of the rhythms for the songs, but I need to complete those, and Billy's going to help me with those. Billy plays bass, I play guitar. Blaine Cook said he would be into singing, which is the singer for The Accused.
Oh yeah, very cool.
So we're going to complete that at some point. And other than that, I've got like a kind of a covers album that I'm doing personally on my own. My wife is actually singing on some of it,
Oh,
which
nice.
is really cool. And I'm just like about 10 covers, like stuff that wouldn't be like necessarily in the metal realm, like just stuff that I like growing up, classic rock stuff. And I'm going to have a bunch of my friends just come in and play different instruments and stuff. So
Oh, nice. That
yeah,
sounds really cool.
just for fun, you know.
When do you plan on? Are you currently working on that, or is that kind of a future
One of
project?
the songs is done. I started working on a second song, which is a Cream cover. And I plan on, like, I'm really busy right now. So, you know, with 2 jobs, you know, and I plan on like starting to really dive into it this fall. But, you know, Witch Mountain's got a show on SLC, as you probably are aware of, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
And then we go on tour in November with Coven in Europe.
Oh, cool.
So I've got a lot of stuff on my plate right now, but I'm trying to work it in, you know. There's no timeline, you know, to get it done.
Gotcha.
So I'm just trying to like make it fun. I don't want to feel like crunched for time to do it either, you know.
Right, right.
So
Yeah, you were very, very busy. You've got a lot on your plate.
yeah, and I have a 2-year-old daughter and,
Whew.
you know, new kid, like 20 years apart from my oldest daughter. So
Wow.
yeah, having a kid at 50 is a little bit strange.
I would imagine. I would
but,
imagine.
but it's cool, you know, like I feel like keeping busy is the only thing that keeps me alive. So, you know, I just wish I had more time to dedicate to music. So right now I'm just trying to pay the bills, and I work in a kitchen, you know, like I told you earlier,
Right.
which it turned out to be full time. But I think that's going to end this year because the studio's starting to pick up. And that's really my ultimate dream, is just to be in the studio recording bands and producing and writing my own stuff. And, you know, and oh yeah, we're going to record the whole next Witch Mountain album here in the studio too.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah. I don't know if you heard that Soundgarden cover, but I'll send it to you after
Okay,
this.
yeah, I don't think I've heard that. I don't know how I missed that.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
all done here in the studio. So
Nice.
yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I definitely want to hear that. I'd love to.
Yeah,
check it
Tad
out.
Doyle actually mastered it in his studio up in Seattle.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's great.
Actually, Tad masters pretty much everything out of Witch Ape studio, his studio in Seattle. He's mastered pretty much everything except for one album out of my studio.
Wow.
So we have kind of a working relationship.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's great.
Tad's amazing. He's got a great ear, and you know, if he hears something that doesn't sound right, he does not hesitate to let me know.
I'm sure that can be sometimes disconcerting, but also it's, you know, as a professional musician, yeah, you want to know these things, and, you know, obviously you want to release the best material that you can. So that's good that you got that ear, you know, got that talent to help you out with that. That's very cool.
Yeah, I mean, he's amazing. So
Nice. You mentioned you know, working on a cover album for yourself, you know, solo album, and mostly kind of hard rock, you know, older hard rock stuff, and you explored that a little bit on the last album, the self-titled Witch Mountain album, which came out about 3 years ago, 2018.
Yep.
You guys did a Spirit cover, which is incredible, and it was funny because when I picked up the album, I kind of glanced at the, you know, very quickly glanced at the titles and then just put it on and started listening, and it didn't register, you know, when I saw you know, the Spirit song, which is Mechanical World. It just didn't click for some, and I love Spirit, I'm a big Spirit fan, and for some reason it didn't click until the song started, and it just stopped me in my tracks. It was like, wow, this is incredible.
right on, man.
I mean,
Awesome.
I just never heard, it was just cool to hear that. I mean, it's such a great song, but then to hear it slowed down, and then, you know, of course with Kayla Dixon singing, it's just, you know, a huge, incredible voice.
Sure.
You know, and just these crunching kind of, you know, crushing guitars. It's pretty incredible. What
Right on. Yeah, we also kind of augmented the we changed the chords a little bit in the kind of bridge chorusy part too. So what's funny is, like, I wasn't as familiar with Spirit except for Nature's Way, you know that song?
Yeah.
And Nate really got into Spirit. And, you know, I'm a huge fan of hip hop. Like, I like modern and old school hip hop too. And there was this like album by a guy named Brother Ali. I don't know if you're familiar with any hip hop.
I know the name.
But he's like this big, huge, like black albino, but he's white with pink eyes, and he's just hairy, and he's amazing, you know. Anyway, he had a song on one of his albums, and it had a loop of the from from the song. And Nate put on that. He's like, you know, we should really cover this song. He pulled out a Spirit record that he got and he put it on. I was like, that's from that Brother Ali. That's a sample. I had no idea where it came from. And yeah, it's a great song. And I immediately fell in love with it when I actually heard the original version of it.
Right.
And you know, Randy California has kind of a tragic story. You know, he almost played with Hendrix, you know. Yeah. And he died, like, I think, trying to rescue his son from when they were in Hawaii, like in 94, 97 or something like that.
Yeah, drowned.
He drowned.
Yeah, right.
He saved his son and he drowned, you know. And but the guy is amazing songwriter and stuff. And I don't know about the whole Led Zeppelin thing. Like, I don't know, the whole Stairway to Heaven, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you could kind of hear
it's so vague that it seems pretty like kind of like far-fetched in my opinion.
And I think it was his, you know, his, well, ex-wife, you know, not his widow, it's his ex-wife. I think it was a money grab for her, basically, is what it came down to, because he never pursued that.
No.
You know,
and those guys probably toured with him and stuff, I'm sure.
They did, yeah. In fact, they were pretty friendly, I think. So yeah, and I think that's, you know, that was the idea, is that, you know, Randy California was probably noodling and, you know, backstage, and Jimmy Page is like, oh, that's kind of cool, and
right,
maybe incorporated some of that guitar work into Stairway to Heaven, but
or even subconsciously, because that happens a lot to everyone, you know, that in the music realm, like they'll just like hear something from a song or something, later on it comes out, and then they won't even realize it for a couple of years. They're like, oh, I actually got that from that, you know. Like,
do you find, I've heard other, and it varies with musicians, but you know, especially when you're writing an album, I've talked to some musicians where they say, yeah, I don't listen to anything because I'm afraid it's going to come into, you know, I subconsciously, as you mentioned, that I might start incorporating those sounds. And then other people are like, no, I listen to lots of music while I'm writing an album, because I actually want influence. Like, oh, that's interesting. So I guess it depends on kind of what you're trying to create.
Yeah, I personally try not to listen to anything either.
Okay.
I try to, like, but I mean, it's gonna, like, you know, especially with musicians, like, things get ingrained in your brain, and you can't help but like be influenced by stuff. We're all influenced by stuff.
Yeah,
there's like no way around that, you know.
Right.
There's really nothing original if you think about it. Like, it all comes from something else, which is fine. You know, it might be unique, but it's not really necessarily 100% original all the time.
Right. Speaking of which, I was curious, you know, kind of let's go back in time a little bit. So growing up, what were you listening to, and really, how did you get into music? How did you start, you know, when did you start playing guitar? What was the catalyst for you to become a musician?
Well, if you really want to go far back, my mom was a singer in a band, and my biological dad was a drummer, and that's how they met.
Okay.
Up in Alaska. And my mom always kind of fueled my fire, and I think she was like my main inspiration behind like being very into music. I didn't necessarily know I wanted to play guitar, but you know, like, I got some money on my like 5th birthday, and I went to the store and I bought Meet the Beatles, you know. I still have that album.
Cool.
It's messed up. It'll destroy my needle. You know, and then from there, you know, I was into Buddy Holly and the Beatles. Those are my first influences. And then, like, you know, in my teens, my well, when I was 9 years old, my stepdad bought me a guitar, but I never really like took to it. And I played right-handed, and it didn't really like feel comfortable. And then when I was about 13, my mom let me have her acoustic guitar, and I played it right-handed for about a year. And then one day I was like, what if I just flip the strings upside down? And I did that because I'm left-handed. And as soon as I did that, I like started like learning a lot. And I heard like Jimi Hendrix was the first thing I heard when I was like in the 7th grade, where I was like, I want to do that.
Nice.
And I was like, it was like 1984, I guess. So it was Jimi Hendrix. And then Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd. Those are like the three bands I listened to like my freshman and sophomore year that basically got me in everything. And then there's like, all the stuff that was around at the time, like 1984 came out, Van Halen. I see the poster on your wall behind you. And but for me, it was like all about Gilmour, Page, and Hendrix. Those are like my main three influences. And I just kind of like thrived on that stuff and listened to it, under a magnifying glass and just like picked it apart. And it was before the internet or cell phones and stuff. So, when I had some money from mowing lawns or something, I'd get like a Guitar World, or Guitar Player magazine and get some tabs. But for the most part, it was like just watching the closet classics on MTV.
Yeah.
And seeing them play. And I realized that when I play, it's like looking in a mirror. So I learned really quick by just watching where their fingers were on fretboards. Jimmy Page and Jimi Hendrix, mainly Jimi Hendrix. I mean, you probably gathered that anyway. But and then from there, it was mostly just classic rock. Then I got into punk rock in the 80s, and I was in a few punk bands like hardcore punk, Poison Idea, Accused, Cryptic Slaughter, Battalion of Saints, just all the super huge like West Coast punk bands, and then also like New York stuff like Pro Mags, and then from there it went like I started listening to like metal stuff. I didn't actually get into Black Sabbath until a lot later. I saw Helmet, and then started listening to like the Melvins, and of course Nirvana, Smashing Pumpkins. I like those bands in the 90s, but then it was like Melvins and Sleep, and then I got into a band called Iami Stubbs, and we opened up for Sleep in 94, became friends with those dudes. And then it was just all about that: Neurosis, Melvins, Sleep, the Heavy, that was like 93, 94. I saw Melvins in 92, I guess. So that was pretty much, and then the Melvins turned me on to more of the Black Sabbath stuff that my stepdad listened to, which I already heard most of their, Paranoid and Master of Reality and stuff like that. But yeah, that's basically where it all spawned. It went from like classic rock to hardcore punk for about 5 or 6 years, and then kind of transitioned into metal, kind of crossover stuff into metal.
And then, so at some point you moved from Alaska to Portland, correct?
Well, I lived in Alaska until 1976, and then my mom married a guy from Georgia, and I moved to Atlanta, Georgia, right outside of Atlanta. So I lived there until I went there 2nd to 7th grade, and I moved the summer before my 7th grade year, and I moved to Oregon, where my mom was from. When they got a divorce, my mom was born in Oregon.
Okay.
So we moved back to Oregon. And the only reason why we were up in Alaska in the first place is because my mom was really young when she had me. And my grandfather, her dad, was he's one of the ice truckers that did the runs from like Anchorage to Prudhoe Bay.
Wow.
And I actually did some of those runs with him when I was like 4 or 5 years old.
Oh, wow.
Because my mom was going to University of Alaska, and that was an easy babysitter, so I'd ride with him. It was awesome.
Yeah,
then I'd see the shows now, and I'm like, oh my fucking god.
Yeah, I know.
So that was, my grandfather and my grandmother grew up in Oregon. My grandfather's from Chicago, but he's Scottish. Like his parents were like full-blooded Scots. So, but they migrated to Chicago, and so yeah, I moved to Oregon in about 82, summer of 82, and I went to 7th grade in Southern Oregon, and then lived in Seaside, which is a coast town about 75 miles from Portland. But I've been in Portland since off and on since 82. Okay. We're outside of Portland in the suburb. I went to middle school and high school in both suburban Portland and also in Seaside my last 2 years. And I moved back to Portland because I couldn't deal with living in a 5,000 person town. There's only like 7 other people to play with. So I moved here in 92 and immediately got in a band and went to Europe in 93 for my first time with the band. And yeah.
And that was that the
M99?
You're kind of a punk band, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was like hard rock punk stuff.
Cool.
And I was already a fan of the band, and I got the opportunity to join them, and immediately went like on a 6-week tour of Europe. It's my first time out of the United States. It was pretty cool.
Nice.
Yeah, I was
And
like
then,
21 years old.
And then you mentioned you were in Iomi Stubbs, and then around, I guess it would have been around 97-ish is when you
90. I joined Iomi Stubbs in right when I got back from that tour with M99. So like 94 to, we're still currently could still do stuff actually.
Okay.
It's the drummer from Poison Idea who plays with us too.
Nice.
The guy that replaced Slayer Hippie in Poison Idea. His name is Chris Cuthbert. And our album is actually going to be 25 years old next year. So I did a digital transfer of the tapes, and I'm currently like remixing the album and making it sound killer because it never got a proper release.
Very cool.
So we'll probably do some anniversary show, but yeah, it's a 3-piece, and we're, like I said, we played with Sleep and Hawkwind, and we opened up for like Alice Donut, No Means No, a bunch of bands. Melvins, we played with the Melvins, a big business at one of the biggest venues in Portland.
Wow.
So I basically did that. We stopped playing around 2008 or 2009, I want to say, but we've done one reunion show in 2000. Let me think about it. 2016, I think, was our last show that we did. We did like one reunion show. But yeah, we're still talking about doing stuff again, but just on a low key kind of basis, like very self-destructive band. We're pretty out of hand.
So, and then around, I guess it was around 97, 98 when you formed Witch Mountain?
July of 97, yeah.
Okay.
Basically what happened was I was on tour with Iomi Stubbs in 97, and around 96, Nate Carson would come to see us play all the time, and he became a huge fan of our band. And at the end of the show, he'd talk to me and he'd be like, give me a little scrap of paper with his number on it. He's like, hey man, if you want to start a band, let me know. And I'm like, okay. And he did that like 2 or 3 times. Like, he was very persistent. And so like 8 months later, like in July, I get back from tour and I was pretty much over it. Like, there were some drug issues with a couple of the other band members, they were like smoking shit they shouldn't. And I had pretty much been fed up, and I had all these songs that I was working on and a couple, 2, 3 written. And I just called Nate up because he just seemed like he had his shit together. I was like, I don't even care how good you are. I've never heard you play drums, but just from his attitude and the way he just carried himself, I could tell that he was good, So we just started it. I'm like, here's the first song. And that was the first album. Like, there's about 4 of those songs, and we wrote the rest of them together.
Cool.
Yeah.
And you sang on that album.
I did. Yeah.
Singer. And then you basically took almost a 10-year kind of hiatus, right? Between that first album and, I mean, at least in terms of producing, putting out albums.
It was actually only between about 2003 and 2006 that we were pretty active. It was only about 3 years. Basically, I like shifted gears back to Iomi Stubbs. Yeah, basically, I shifted gears back to Stubbs, and that's when we played with like Big Business and the Melvins and No Means No and Alice Donut and all these great bands. Because we get like these one-off shows, but we never wrote anything new. We have all this old material that no one's ever really heard, Right. Only a handful of people do, and they're like really shocked to know I was in Iomi Stubbs, like the guys in Cough. That band Cough?
Yeah.
Like we toured with them, and they're like, "You're in Iomi Stubbs?" They're like showing me pictures like when they got home. Yeah, I bought your album off eBay. I'm like, I don't even know how you would know about that living in Richmond, Virginia.
Right.
There's only like 1,000 copies of that record floating around. But we always come back together though, But who knows how long it's gonna last, like. We're all getting older and things change, but we're getting a lot more respect these days, which is nice. So it makes it a little easier.
Yeah. And then how did Uta come into the band? And had you just decided you didn't want to sing anymore? Were you looking for a singer, or?
I never really wanted to sing. I just did it out of necessity. I'm not a singer. I'm a guitar player. But I can sing. I don't think I'm the greatest singer. My wife will tell you different. She thinks I'm great, but I'll do some singing on my covers album. But she was interning at about 2008 or 2009. She was interning with Nate. I think it was around 2008 at Nanatir, his booking agency. And he was like, yeah, you should check out her band, Aranya. And I'm like, okay. I listened to it. I'm like, she's got a great voice. Let's we had a show opening up for Pentagram in like 2009. We're like, we should just invite her on stage to sing one of our songs and learn it. So she learned, I think it was a Power Grader, which was off our first album, and learned it. And after the show, I was like she shocked me. She was so good and so theatrical on stage that it like she wasn't that way in rehearsal at all. It like blew me away. So I was like, we should maybe see if she wants to sing full time with us. And Nate's like, I was thinking the same thing, like, so we got her to sing full time. And then we ended up writing like well, the first record we recorded south of Salem was all stuff I'd already written before, and I had most of the lyrics for. But Uta and I wrote Cauldron of the Wild and Mobile of Angels pretty much exclusively together. And actually, I just hung out with her yesterday for the first time in like a year. She came over and we hung out.
Nice.
It was really cool to see her and hang out. But yeah, she just decided to quit music in 2014.
Wow.
So her and Charles both quit, at the same time. And then I was basically just going to start a new band or something. I was kind of done over it. I just wanted to break. But then Kayla got a hold of us. Actually, a lot of people got a hold of us. A dozen people were like, hey, are you trying out singers? Are you trying out singers? And we had Billy Anderson do a mix of one of our songs instrumentally. And we finally were just like, okay, we sent it out to a few people. And then some of it was, and but Kayla went into a studio and did a video, and it's on YouTube somewhere, her tryout video. And she just, like, I was living with Nate at the time, and Nate's like, you need to come upstairs and watch this. And I came upstairs, and we're just like, she was living in Washington, D.C. at the time. And she moved out to join our band. She was a fan that joined our band.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
And she was like 19, like hungry as fuck too. Like she's amazing. She really is. Yeah. It's like we won the lottery twice, man, with Etha and Kayla. It's crazy. Like,
yeah,
they're
two incredible vocalists, really. I mean, I remember when,
different styles for sure,
yeah,
but
yeah,
incredible. Yeah.
both. Yeah, I remember when because I'm friends with Uta on Facebook, and I remember, I think she had posted that she was leaving the band and didn't want to play music anymore, and I was, I like, no, this can't be happening. This is not good. But then, when I heard Kayla, it was like, wow, she's incredible. She's, and yeah, like you said, they have different styles, but just both huge voices, and it goes so well with your style of guitar playing, I think, as well. It sounds like you guys really feed off of each other.
Yeah, Kayla and Utsa both are the kind of people that I'll like play a song or a demo. I'll spend like all this time. I'll spend like Nighthawk. I don't know if you're familiar with that song. The last song on our last record. It took me 8 months to do that demo, and it was like a 40-track demo with drums and layers of guitars and different sections and stuff. And I did it all when I was like still novicing as a audio engineer at my own house. And I'll just like present something like that to her, or I did with Uta in the past. Like, here you go. Here's the whole album, Mobile of Angels. Here's all the parts and stuff. And those guys will come back in like an hour or a day with all this lyrics and melodies and everything. I'm like, the fuck, man? I worked on this shit for months. And like, they're both so talented. And Kayla is like incredible too that way. She comes back with like 5 or 6 part harmonies, and it's just like, wow, what kind of where can I get the pills you take to make your brain do this? Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think that Kayla especially is just really just adapts to whoever she plays with. I mean, she's in Dress the Dead too.
Yeah.
And she was in this band Demons Within, and all different, completely different bands, you know, musical backgrounds and whatnot. You know, Dress the Dead's incredible too. I don't know if you've listened to them at all, but
Yeah, I have. They're really, really good.
but she has a knack for just you know, she's been in a couple of movies. You know, she does like Broadway style theater, you know, musicals and stuff. Like she's very active. She teaches voice lessons. Like she's a really incredible talent.
Yeah.
So I think that she just grown up in theater, you know, since she was a kid, that she has a way of just soaking up what's going on and really just making it work. You know, she's about the music. She's not about herself. She's about what makes the song the best, not what's the best for Kayla.
Yeah.
You know?
That's a good thing. That's a very
I think it's good. I think we all do actually in Witch Mountain.
Yeah. Well, and I was going to say, it seems, you know, I mentioned, you know, not just, I don't think it's just, you know, the two of you. I think the entire band, it seems like you guys really feed off of each other, you know, you're musically.
Oh yeah.
And especially, you know, I think the live performance as a band, you guys really seem to feed off of each other's energy a lot, which is really cool to see as well.
It's the best lineup we've ever had, and it's also the longest running lineup we've had. You know, obviously Nate and I have played, we've been the core members forever, but like Justin Brown, holy shit, dude. Talk about a monster of a bass player, man. Like he just completely blows me away night after night. And sometimes he'll just throw stuff in off the cusp when we're playing live. And I'm just like, where the fuck did that come from? You know? And he's an incredible like body of energy. And you know, it's just really a blessing to have this group of people right now. It really is.
Yeah.
They're all just talented, you know. Justin actually played some pedal steel on the solo album I was telling you about, the covers.
Oh, cool.
And you know, the one thing I think about, like especially me and Justin, is that we kind of like stuff across the board. Like we like everything from like the Beach Boys to Beethoven to like Slayer and Morbid Angel and everything in between.
Nice.
You know what I mean? Like we're into music, you know, and so is Nate to a certain degree. Nate's not really into hip hop like I think I am. I think Justin's more into hip hop than Nate. And Kayla's kind of into this newer stuff, you know, like a lot of the newer bands that we're not as familiar with, but it still brings like a certain element. Like when we go on tour, it's like a very schizophrenic like playlist in the band.
I bet.
Yeah.
And Justin joined around the same time as Kayla, right? Or did he come on board a little bit before her?
Same exact time, pretty much. So I was working at a place called Cheese Bar with Greg Emily from Holy Grove.
Okay.
The bass player. And I was like beating my head into the ground. We tried out all these different bass players. And I'm like, Greg's like, what's up? And I'm like, I'm looking for a bass player, you know, and he's like, I know somebody for you. This guy's great. And he loves Witch Mountain. He's like seen you guys play a bunch of times and he's a fan. I'm like, all right. So I met up with Justin and we met up over a beer and then we just started rehearsing his practice space. I just started teaching the songs. He took notes. He was very professional, extremely professional. And at the time he was playing Rickenbackers and then he switched to Fender P and jazz basses after that. And like after about 2 weeks to jam with him, I'm like, okay, dude, you're in. He's like, really? Sweet. He was like psyched, you know, like he had a practice space like not too far from where I live now. But yeah, he took notes and he was like asking a bunch of questions and he just would come up with his own parts. And I was like, okay, this is what we need. You know, our bass player before Charles, he was more he just kind of followed what I did, which is fine. And I would have to help him like, you know, through some of the parts and stuff, but And Charles has probably gotten a lot better since then, but he didn't have a lot of experience, but he was such a cool guy that we just want him in the band, you know. He rode motorcycles with me and Uta. That's kind of how that came about. But yeah, Justin is a monster, and he's like, you know, if it wasn't for him, I might have already quit this band a couple times, to be honest with you. He's kind of my buddy on the road and stuff, you know. We're kindred spirits. It's really nice.
Nice.
Yeah. We both lived in small towns and stuff, you know. It's like
That's cool.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, I was curious, you mentioned that you lived in Georgia for a little while.
Mhm.
I was curious if you think that maybe living there, some of that influence, because there's one of the things I really like about Witch Mountain too is, you know, is there's this swampiness, and maybe that was some of that was probably Uta with her kind of folk music and the lyrics, you know,
Mhm.
specifically like, you know, like the Ballad of Lanky Ray, it's something like, you know, but there's
Sure.
kind of this swampy, almost southern rock vibe that's incorporated in there, which is really cool. And I'm curious if that, you know, maybe some of that, you know, rubbed off on you a little bit, you know, living there as a kid.
Big time. I lived on a cattle ranch, and it was about 45 miles south of Georgia. Or Atlanta in Georgia. It's considered South Metro now. There's a town called Griffin, and more black people than white people in this town. And although I lived in a very white neighborhood, you know, but there was still a little bit of segregation. The KKK were still marching down the street and stuff. You know what I mean? Like, it was crazy times. And my mom completely condemned it because she was a hippie. But you know, I grew up around guns on a cattle ranch. I mean, we'd go shooting every weekend. You know, I learned how to fire a rifle when I was 7 years old, and one of the hometown, you know, one of the state heroes was the Allman Brothers. So I listened to a lot of Allman Brothers growing up. Obviously, Leonard Skinner, you know, Molly Hatchet. I liked, you know, as a kid. And we went to rodeos and stuff. So there was always country music playing in all the like the Kroger's and the Piggly Wiggly grocery stores and stuff growing up. So it wasn't like, I was still into the classic rock stuff, but it all had an influence on me. Especially, I mean, I listen to Allman Brothers all the time still. They're still a staple in my diet.
Yeah, great band.
You know, so definitely had a huge influence on me, and thank you for noticing that, because you're like the first person that's actually ever recognized that.
Really? Interesting.
And also back then on the radio, you know, other than like Casey Kasem's Top 40 Countdown, which I listened to every weekend religiously. And I had one of those like Panasonic tape recorders I'd stick next to my clock radio and tape it, you know, so I could hear all the songs. And other than that, like, there wasn't a lot of like national stuff back then. There was like regional hits, you know. So like the Atlanta rhythm section was like huge back then, and Willie Nelson is huge in like my area, and like On the Road Again came out, and Kenny Rogers, you know,
Right.
And what's his name, Ronnie Millsap was huge, you know, stuff like that, you know. That's I grew up on that music because that's what was on the radio all the time, you know. It was 96 Rock out of Atlanta. And they would play like all this stuff, but they would incorporate so much, even though it was a rock station, all these country hits were huge.
Yeah.
Back then, you know, being a redneck was actually pretty cool around the Dukes of Hazzard and stuff in the late 70s, early 80s, you know.
Right.
So, but yeah, like, and then like my grandfather was really into like Marty Robbins and Johnny Cash and stuff like that. So, I mean, I actually listened to that kind of stuff quite a bit. I don't, you know, it's weird. I have a mixed bag of stuff, but at the end of the day, it's usually classic rock or classic country that I listen to, you know.
Interesting. Okay.
You know, I'll put on Slayer once in a while, you know. I played Brain and Blood the other day, but the next album will be like, you know, Ring of Fire or something.
Cool. Yeah, and I think it you know, it shows. I think, you know, there's a kind of an eclecticism about Witch Mountain's music. I mean, obviously, you know, to play the genre game, it's, you know, it's kind of doomy stoner metal type stuff, but there's definitely a lot of other elements going on, and you can, at least I can hear that. And, you know, like I said, you know, with the southern rock and kind of, yeah, folk and you know, Americana country, you know, kind of
Sure.
old country music and stuff like that. And I think, and even, you know, I think, you know, R&B and hip hop. I mean, not that you're doing hip hop, but I think those kinds of influences, you can hear some of that in the at least in the song structure, maybe.
Oh, big time. Like Jimmy Rogers is like one of my favorite musicians of all time. I don't know if you know who that is. He wrote "In the Jailhouse Now." We're in the jailhouse now, you know. And Blue Yodel #2, and a bunch of like stuff from like 30s. He died of tuberculosis when he was like 37 years old. Robert Johnson is another huge hero of mine, you know. Darby and Tarleton, like all that old timey stuff had a huge influence on me too. I didn't get into that stuff until later, you know, and obviously R&B, like all sorts of rhythm and blues from like the 40s all the way through like, you know, the 70s, all that Motown stuff, you know, anything black was cool to me.
Right.
You know, I just have a ton of bands that I love, you know.
Yeah, that's cool.
Like if you ask me next week, it'd probably be a different, you know, group of bands. Like I mean, yesterday I was listening to Earth, Wind and Fire, you know, Marvin Gaye, you know what I mean? Like Wilson Pickett. It just depends on the day, you know. Howlin' Wolf, Muddy Waters.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I mean, I listen to a lot of metal. I'm you know, kind of a metal freak, but I grew up. I think we're very similar in age. I'm 50, or I'm about to turn 50, and yeah, same thing. Like I remember, it was funny you mentioned, you know, the radio station in Atlanta playing, yeah, like throwing in country songs. And I remember when you said that, it kind of kicked in this memory of, you know, here it was, I think it was Casey.
You're born in 71?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, I mean, I was born in 70, so we're pretty close in age. So
yeah.
So you remember.
Yeah, I remember like, yeah, the rock station here in Utah, you know, it was in Salt Lake, KCPX, and they would play, you know, yeah, they play like Asia and then turn around and play, you know, like Alabama, right after it.
Oh yeah.
Something
yeah,
like
you remember Elvira?
yeah, exactly. It was exactly that song too. But yeah, it was interesting that they'd kind of throw in a here and there, and yeah, like Willie Nelson, like on the
Statler Brothers.
yeah, exactly. You know, and then here's Styx, you know, so it was it's funny that
Black Oak, Arkansas, whatever.
Yeah,
totally. Yeah, I mean that was, you know, it's funny because I like all the 80s stuff too. I mean, I got into all that like New Order, Joy Division, The Cure, Violent Femmes. I mean, I really actually enjoyed every decade. I feel kind of lucky to have been born when I was, because I got to experience all this stuff in the 70s.
Yeah.
And then in the 80s, and then getting into punk rock, you know, like in the mid 80s, and then skateboarding, and, you know, like pretty much like, you know, all the guys in my band are younger than me, and they try and like they'll play something, I'll know exactly which album side it's on, which song it is. And there's one time, like I didn't even realize it, but for years and years I'm like, oh, that's this and this and this, it came out this year, you know, like and it annoys people. I didn't realize it. It's just like I'm kind of like I soak it in, you know, like I just want to learn as much about music as possible. And one time I cited a wrong song on a Soundgarden album, and Justin was like, "Aha, I got you!" Like, I was just like, "What the fuck, man? What do you?"
I think I do the same thing where I kind of have this almost useless
encyclopedia knowledge
of bands, and who was in the band and which album and when something came out, because my wife will make fun of me and she'll do the his name, the comic book guy from The Simpsons.
The big belly and that's
inferring that it's me. Like actually that is the
my wife totally makes fun of me too. I had a coworker a little while ago that he moved back to Mexico, but this guy named Juan that lived here, and I worked with him in a kitchen, and he's like, "You know the year, you know the album, you know their drug dealer's name." That's great. What kind of drugs they were on.
That's funny. Nice.
I was just like, all right, I get it. Like, I guess no one's that, but then you meet somebody like you who actually likes that kind of stuff,
That's great. Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, I don't want to keep you all day, but I mean, this has been great. I don't want to keep you all day, but
Oh, I'm good, man. I got more time.
Okay, good.
Okay.
So I was curious. You mentioned that you've got a couple songs, or you're kind of playing around with some stuff for the next Witch Mountain album. Have the other band members tossed around some ideas? Have you guys kind of had more formalized conversations about kind of what the direction is going to be, what your plan is, or is it too early at this state?
Well, I haven't actually seen Kayla or Justin over a year because of COVID.
Oh wow.
We're actually we're getting together in my studio on Sunday to set up to start rehearsing for this Crucial Fest.
Oh yeah, cool.
Which I need to actually relearn all the songs. But no, I mean, I think Justin and Nate have both heard the ideas, but me and Justin collaborate a little bit, and then Kayla just kind of paints the music and lyrics over the top. But for the most part, I've been kind of the main songwriter. I mean, I know those guys want to be more involved, and it's not like I'm some kind of like Billy Corgan egomaniac that needs to write everything, but it's just kind of naturally happened that way, through my whole thing. So what I'll probably do is I'll make a demo, and if they want to like help tweak and arrange it or write some parts to it, that's fine. I'm in a position where I can just make a demo and just email it to them.
Yeah.
So, which I've been doing for like the last 12 years, with every, lineup of this band. But there's really no plans as of now. Like originally, like those guys wanted to be more involved with our last single, that came out right before we toured with Corrosion of Conformity in 2019. And me and Justin we sat down here in, well, not this studio, but it was the same area, but it was a little different now because I built it out. And we batted around some ideas, and I was like, well, here's a demo that I have that I've done from start to finish. He's like, let's just use that. So it just depends on how it flows. Like, the last album, there was that acoustic, the Hellfire song,
Yeah.
That was mostly Justin and Kayla that came up with that.
Oh.
I just came in and played a little bit. Justin played classical guitar on that. I just came in and just played some chords, but that was like the first song on a Witch Mountain record that I had pretty much had no writing at all on. There's all that in Mechanical World, obviously, because I didn't write that. But there's really no plans, I guess. Make a long story short, I'm probably making it more complicated than
It's interesting. It's interesting to hear kind of how the process, and it sounds like it's to some degree fairly organic, kind of how right.
Tad Doyle's calling me.
Oh, nice.
I'm gonna tell him I'm gonna call him back real quick. All right.
Okay, no problem.
Hey brother, I'm in an interview. Can I call you right back? All right. Thanks. Bye.
Very cool. So I'll finish up with one last question for you.
Sure.
And then let you go. I don't know if you're a craft beer drinker at all, but my page, Brews and Tunes, I pair craft beer with mostly metal albums, hard rock albums.
Okay.
Kind of like somebody would. It's a bit ridiculous, but it's something like people pairing wine and food. It's kind of a similar idea.
Sure.
So let's say it's a Friday night. Rob Wrong is hanging out at home. What beer do you crack open, and what album are you spinning?
Friday night, I'm at home. Lately, I've been getting into Badfinger because I'm ashamed to say that I've never really listened to them. So it would be Badfinger Straight Up. That album.
Good album.
I've been obsessed with since February, which I'd never listened to before, except for the obvious, Day by Day.
Yeah.
And it would probably be a Hop Valley Bubble Stash.
Bubble Stash. Interesting.
You know that beer?
I know the brewery, but I've never had that beer.
Yeah. It's really skunky. It's really like fresh hoppy.
Nice.
I do dig the IPAs, although I've been gaining a little weight in the pandemic, so I've switched to seltzers lately.
Okay.
I've been drinking the 5% seltzers instead of like the 7.5% IPAs. But yeah, Bubble Stash is one of my favorites, and the Cryo Stash, which is a little bit stronger.
Nice.
Yeah, Hot Valley.
Yeah, they
Great
make some
brewery.
good stuff. Yeah, I like
Yeah.
those guys.
So that's
Rob,
what
this was. Oh, sorry. What?
I said. That's what it would be.
Nice. I love it. That's great. Well, Rob, this has been great. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to see what you guys are going to be doing in the future, and you know, and the fact that you're going to be on the road in the not too distant future is very exciting news as well. You know, you mentioned Crucial Fest, and then also touring in Europe. You know, later on. So everybody out there in Europe, you should definitely check out. If you haven't already, check out Witch Mountain. You will not be sorry. Killer band, great live act.
Thank you.
So yeah, thank you so much for meeting with me today. This
Absolutely, dude. Will I see you at Crucial Fest?
I'm hoping so.
Okay.
I plan on it. So yeah, I'll keep an eye out for you. And
I'll message you when I come to town. We're only going to be there for like 24 hours. We're in and out, so
okay,
like 6 hours. Yeah.
Nice.
Cool, man.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
All right, Victor.
Okay, take care. Have a great night.
All right, man. Take it easy.